Marisha here, and London has a reputation of being an expensive city to live in, and it's true. It can be expensive, but for me, it's actually cheaper to live in London than it was for me to live in the Washington D.C. metro area. And today I'm going to share with you some of the factors that led to that. Number one, and what I think is probably the number one factor anywhere you go, is housing. So the housing market in London is awful. It's there's way more demand than there is availability, and prices are ridiculously high. Um, but prices are high in Metro DC as well. So I lived in Alexandria, Virginia. I was 8 miles away from the Capitol building, so very close to Washington, D.C. And if you watch my channel and you saw my video on how I was able to afford to come over here, you know that when I was in DC, and I know I'm saying in DC, technically Alexandria, Virginia, but I found the cheapest one bedroom apartment that I could possibly find, and it was a hovel. But by the end of my time there, I was paying close to $1,500 a month in rent. That included utilities. They had raised my rent every single year. And over here, I kind of lucked out with what I found. It's not an exact one-to-one comparison because in the States, I had a one-bedroom apartment to myself. Over here, I'm in a three-bedroom apartment, so I have a flatmate, and then the third bedroom is reserved for our landlady when she's in town. Um, so I do have to adjust my lifestyle a little bit. Sharing a kitchen and a bathroom with somebody else is not my ideal, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make for living in a place that is really well located in central London and is affordable by London standards. I'm paying 950 a month, 950 pounds. So in US dollars by today's exchange rate, that's just a little over $1,200 a month. And utilities are included. So we're talking $300 less per month here in London than I was paying in the States. And I've lived here for a little over a year now, and my landlady did not raise my rent at the 1 year mark. So fingers crossed that that continues. Um, but another factor is that in the States, I was also paying for an internet and cable package, and that was close to $200 a month. I mean, I needed internet because you need it for today's life, especially when COVID hit. And I probably could have done without cable, but I really liked having access to live television and being able to turn on the TV whenever and getting news and weather. Over here, my internet is also included with my rent, so I don't have to pay for internet. And there's no reason for me to pay for any TV packages because I can either find what I need online or I can also get news from the weekday newspaper that is free in any metro station. Um, so that's another $200 a month less that I'm paying here than I was paying in the States. The other major factor is transportation costs. So in the States, with very few exceptions, you have to have a car to get by. And I was a little bit ahead of the game in the sense that I owned my car, so I didn't have car payments, to pay off my loan. But I still had obviously monthly insurance payments. Again, you're talking $150, $200 a month for that. You're talking gas, the cost of gas, regular oil changes, any sort of maintenance that you have to do when you have to take it into the mechanic. In Virginia, you had to pay for a yearly safety inspection and a biannual emissions test. The city of Alexandria charged me a personal property tax for owning a car, which is total BS. Cannot recommend living in Virginia from a car owner's perspective, I have to say. Um, and then, of course, other little incidentals like when you take your car to the car wash or you go to the gas station, you have to pay for air to put in your tires or the industrial strength vacuum to clean out your car or whatever. Over here, I don't own a car. I can get most places just by walking. I walk to church, I walk to the grocery store. There are any number of kind of free museums I can go to that are in walking distance. Regent's Park is right nearby. I can walk there. Lots of restaurants I can get to. And then the things that I can't walk to, I can get a bus or I can get the tube, and it's maybe £3 round trip for the bus, um, and maybe £6 round trip for the tube, depending on where you're going. If you're going farther out into like zone 5 or 6, then it's going to be more, but there's really rarely any occasion to do that. So even if I get a job that makes me take the tube every day, 5 days a week, I'm still not going to be paying nearly as much in transportation costs as I was in the States. So housing, transportation are the two major factors of why it's cheaper to live in London, but there are a couple of minor factors as well. One is that food is cheaper, at least in terms of groceries. Yes, you can totally spend lots of money eating out if you want, just like you could in the States. But when you're comparing groceries, they are cheaper over here. I will probably do a video in the future where I specify and I do an actual comparison shop, because I'll be going home for Christmas so I can get current prices on American foods. But I do remember when I first moved here and did my first grocery shopping trip. I got a pint of blueberries for like 90 pence. And I was like, this would be $3 in the States. Um, Not everything is that big of a difference in price, but it definitely, especially when you're talking about produce and staples, it's definitely cheaper here. Like you can get a kilogram of carrots for like 50 pence. And for my American friends, a kilogram is like 2.2 pounds. Um, yeah, so again, I might go into more detail in another video for that, but yeah, grocery shopping is cheaper. And then entertainment is cheaper, or it can be cheaper. Obviously, there are places where you can spend a lot of money. Like if you want front row tickets to the opera or the ballet, that's going to cost you a pretty penny. Um, but there are so many free options in London. London has absolutely spoiled me for this, and I will do a separate video just kind of exploring all of the free things that are available. But there are so many museums and, exhibits and events that are free that you really, if you wanted to, could go the entire year without spending any money on entertainment. You really could. In the States, that's not the case. Even in DC, where the Smithsonian complex, all the Smithsonian museums are free, it's harder to get there. Like, I still had to pay to park my car either at the end of the Metro line and Metro in, or somewhere in the city if I drove in. Um, Whereas here, again, some things I can get to just by walking, or it's cheaper for me to take the tube or the bus than it would be for me to get there in the States. But other than the Smithsonian's, nothing else is free. Like a lot of what I did for entertainment was going to the movies, which is really getting expensive, especially if you want like popcorn and pop. I've only been to the movies once since I've been here because I really didn't feel the need. There was so much else to do to keep myself entertained. I can just wait till it comes out on video, right? Um, and trivia, for example. In the States, that was another thing that I did almost every week with my friends is we would go to trivia on Tuesday night, and it was at a bar, and the expectation was, of course, you're going to buy dinner there. So you're spending, maybe 15, $10, $15, depending on, what you get, um, for your dinner in order to play trivia. Over here, I actually have done trivia two different ways. I'm in a league, which is different from like normal pub trivia, and I paid a fee to join a team. It was like £12, and that gets me onto the team and playing every single week for most of the year. I'd have to figure out exactly how many weeks it was to figure out what the cost per game is, but we play 3 games each week, every Tuesday. So it's probably like 20 pence a game or something. um, or if you're playing regular pub trivia, there's a per person fee to play, usually between £1 and £3. But then there's no expectation that you're going to buy food or drinks. So even if you do just get like a drink, if I get like a pop or something, and pay my fee, I'm still paying less than I would on a meal in like for bar trivia in the States, you know? So, I mean, yeah, the States, a lot of places where I lived, entertainment cost money. It was going to the movies or going to Dave and Buster's or, you know, anything where you're paying an entry fee for concerts and things like that. And yeah, there are concerts and things here that I will pay money for, but there's so many free options. Again, I'll do a separate video on it because London has absolutely spoiled me for free entertainment. And then one smaller factor is that my phone bill is a lot less here. I had a really, for the States, cheap phone bill in the States. It was $35 a month, my plan. But really it was like 38 with tax. Over here, £10 a month. And honestly, I could probably switch to a cheaper plan and still be okay for the amount of data that I use. I'm just too lazy to do it. So even little things like that, it's cheaper. So I guess I would say that if you're ever in a position where you're considering moving somewhere and you're a little bit scared because it has a reputation for being expensive, just understand that expensive is relative and that first of all, in most places where it is a higher cost of living, usually you're going to get a salary that's commensurate with that because they understand. Like in London, you do get extra pay because you're in London and they understand that London is more expensive than other places in the country. And then also keep in mind that, you know, whenever anybody's talking about the cost of living someplace, it's an average. And there are ways to live below the average cost of living, right? Like I don't pay as much for rent as the average person pays for rent. And you can make lifestyle choices or do bargain shopping or whatever. There are ways to live in a more expensive place without it feeling like it's expensive. Like you can make it work if that's what you really want. So if you do the research and you think this is a city that looks like a good place for me in terms of like what my personality is and what it has to offer, then don't be automatically put off by a reputation for it being, you know, an expensive place to live. Like, subscribe, tell your friends how gnarly this channel is, and I'll see you next time.